So we, the people, shouldn't be stuck with these debts on these mortgage derivatives and all. We need to get that behind us, which means the government shouldn't be doing any bailout. So most of the things to improve the environment is getting the government out of the way and enforce contract laws and enforce bankruptcy laws.
Mr. Speaker, come in on that point, and as you can address what you would like to do, but also specifically the question, do we need federal programs?
Well, there are three things that can be done at a specifically South Carolina level. There's one easy thing to do at a national level, and that's repeal the Dodd-Frank bill, which is killing small business, killing small banks. That would help overnight. But three specifics. One, there's $29 billion plus of natural gas offshore. In Louisiana, jobs for that kind of production are $80,000 a year. That would help us become energy independent from the Middle East. Part of the royalties for the natural gas could be used then to modernize the port of Charleston and the port of Georgetown. Charleston has to be modernized to meet the larger ships that will come through the Panama Canal in 2014. 1 out of every 5 jobs in South Carolina is dependent on the port of Charleston. The third thing you could do, frankly, is fundamentally, radically overhaul the Corps of Engineers. The Corps of Engineers today takes 8 years to study, not to complete, to study doing the port. We won the entire Second World War in 3 years and 8 months.
A subset of the jobs conversation among the candidates in this state over the past week, Mr. Speaker, has been from you and from the now departed Governor Perry, pretty sharp criticism of Governor Romney's tenure as the CEO of Bain Capital. I want you to be specific. What do you think he did wrong that makes you question his ability as a president to create jobs?
I think there are specific cases. Georgetown Steel would be a case here, in a company in Gaffney, South Carolina. The specific cases where Bain Capital's model, which was to take over a company and dramatically leverage it, leave it with a great deal of debt, made it less likely to survive. I think the governor ought to explain. It started because he cited his experience as a key part of his preparation for being president. And so I think the underlying model of that kind of investment, which is very different from venture capital, ought to be explained, and those cases ought to be looked at.
Well, Governor Romney, let me give you a chance. Explain.
Well, I hope I get a chance to talk about the topic you began with. We'll come back to the direct attack from Speaker Gingrich in a moment. So let's go back and talk about, first, what you do to get the economy going. And of course, we've spoken time and again about our tax code that's out of alignment with other nations. We've spoken about the fact that regulation is overwhelming us, that we need to take care of our energy resources and become energy secure. We have to open up markets, and we have to crack down on China when they cheat. But I'd like to talk about something else that President Obama has been doing. He's been practicing crony capitalism. And if you want to get America going again, you've got to stop the spread of crony capitalism. He gives General Motors to the UAW. He takes $500 million and sticks it into Solyndra. He stacks the labor stooges on the NLRB so they can say no to Boeing and take care of their friends in the labor movement. You go across the country with regards to energy, because he has to bow to the most extreme members of the environmental movement, he turns down the Keystone Pipeline, which would bring energy and jobs to America. This president is the biggest impediment to job growth in this country, and we have to replace Barack Obama to get America working again.
So let's go back. I'm glad you had that opportunity. I do want to go back and see if we can clear this up. Now, the questions about Bain, many have been about the number. You have said 120,000 jobs that you can tie back to decisions you made at Bain Capital. I want you to take your time, sir, and do the math. Do the math and how you get to 100 or 120,000 jobs.
I'll do the math, but let me tell you, I know we're going to get attacked from the left, from Barack Obama, on capitalism. I know that people are going to say, oh, you should only practice it this way or that way, and think they know better than the private market. My view is capitalism works. Free enterprise works. And I find it kind of strange on a stage like this with Republicans having to describe how private equity and venture capital work and how they're successful and how they create jobs. But let me tell you that answer. We started a number of businesses. 4 in particular created 120,000 jobs. As of today, we started them years ago. They've grown well beyond the time I was there to 120,000 people that have been employed by those enterprises. There are others we've been with, some of which have lost jobs. People have evaluated that since I ran 4 years ago when I ran for governor. And those that have been documented to have lost jobs lost about 10,000 jobs. So 120,000 less 10 means that we created something over 100,000 jobs. And there's some, by the way, that were businesses we acquired that grew and became more successful, like Domino's Pizza and a company called Dwayne Reed and others. I'm very proud of the fact that throughout my career, I have worked to try and build enterprises, hopefully to return money to investors. There's nothing wrong with profit, by the way. That profit went to pension funds, to charities. It went to a wide array of institutions. A lot of people benefited from that. And by the way, as enterprises become more profitable, they can hire more people. I'm someone who believes in free enterprise. I think Adam Smith was right, and I'm going to stand and defend capitalism across this country throughout this campaign. I know we're going to hit it hard from President Obama, but we're going to stuff it down his throat and point out it is capitalism and freedom that makes America strong.
Senator Santorum, join the conversation specifically to the initial question from Jane. What should the federal government be doing? And do you believe in specific programs? And I also want to ask you if you share the Speaker's concern about Governor Romney's tenure at Bain.
Well, on the first question, I believe in capitalism, too. I believe in capitalism for everybody. Not necessarily high finance, but capitalism that works for the working men and women of this country who are out there paddling alone in America right now, who have an unemployment rate 2.5 times those who are college educated and feel that no party cares about them. Because you have the Democratic Party and Barack Obama, and all he wants to do is make them more dependent, give them more food stamps, give them more Medicaid. I was talking to a state official the other day that in Iowa that told me that the state of Iowa is being fined because they're not signing up enough people onto the Medicaid program. This is what the answer is for the economic squalor that Barack Obama has visited on working men and women in this country, and it's creating more government programs and getting them more dependent on those programs. We need a party that just doesn't talk about high finance and cutting corporate taxes or cutting the top tax rates. We need to talk about how we're going to put men and women in this country who built this country back to work in this country in the manufacturing sector of our economy. And there's one candidate that has done that. I have done that. I've done that throughout the course of this campaign. I talked about how we're going to target and make sure that we can be competitive. I was in Boeing today, and I was up at BMW yesterday. South Carolina can compete with anybody in this world in manufacturing. We just need to give them the opportunity to compete, and we are 20% more costly than our top 9 trading partners, and that's excluding labor costs. That's why I said we need to cut the corporate tax in manufacturing down to 0. We need to give manufacturers a leg up so they can compete for the jobs, half of which we went from 21% of this country in manufacturing down to 9%, and we left the dreams of working men and women on the sideline. We need to show that we're the party, we're the movement that's going to get those Reagan Democrats, those conservative Democrats all throughout the states that we need to win this election, to sign up with us, and we'll put them back to work.
Let's stay on the economy, and let's stay on the South Carolina experience all you gentlemen have had. As you know, and as this audience reflects, this is a state incredibly proud of its military tradition and incredibly proud of its veterans. Many of those veterans who have served post 9/11, served honorably in Iraq and Afghanistan, are coming back to a terrible economy. Right now, unemployment rate for post 9/11 veterans aged 18 to 24 is at 22%. Congressman Paul, to you first, sir. Should the federal government be specifically targeting that part, or veterans coming back saying the unemployment rate is so high among that subgroup that the federal government should offer a tax incentive to employers or take other steps to help them, to incentivize the economy, to help them get jobs?
To some degree, but you really want to make the environment, the economy healthy for everybody and not designate special places. But to help them out to come back is probably necessary on some occasions now. But we have to think about how serious our problems are here, because we faced something much, much greater after World War II. We had 10 million came home all at once. But what did we do then? There were some of the liberals back then that said, oh, we have to have more work programs and do this and that. And they thought they would have to, do everything conceivable for those 10 million. They never got around to it because they came home so quickly. But you know what the government did? They cut the budget by 60%. They cut taxes by 30%. By that time, the debt had been liquidated, and everybody went back to work again. You didn't need any special programs. So One thing, talking about concern about the military and the veterans, I'm very proud that, I get twice as many donations from the active military people than all the rest put together. So I'm very concerned about them. I think where the real problem is we can create a healthy economic environment if we did the right things. But where the veterans really deserve help, both as a physician and as a congressman, is the people who come back and aren't doing well health-wise. They need a lot more help. We have an epidemic now of suicide of our military coming back. So they need a lot of medical help, and I think they come up shortchanged. They came up shortchanged after Vietnam War, Persian Gulf War, and even now. They don't get care from the Veterans Administration.
I think we all agree there's a generational challenge for the country with the brain injuries and the other injuries and the suicide, as you mentioned. I want to stay on the economy for a minute, though. Senator Santorum, you started to shake your head. Again, specifically, it's a role of government question. Should the government be stepping in and saying we need to help this subgroup in the economy that's hurting, the veterans?
Well, obviously, we have and should continue to have veterans' preferences. People who went out and served this country should have preferences when it comes to job positions when they come back to work in this economy. But my dad and mom worked for the Veterans Administration. I grew up on a VA grounds, lived in an apartment on those VA grounds for the first 18 years of my life. And I saw the impact of the Vietnam War on those veterans who came back. And they came back very damaged. They've not just with physical wounds, but a lot of psychological ones. And that's, I'm sure, a very big part of the high unemployment rate that we're dealing with. And we need to be much, much more aggressive. We have the President of the United States who said he is going to cut veterans' benefits, cut our military, at a time when these folks are 4, 5, 6, 7 tours, coming back in and out of jobs, sacrificing everything for this country, and the President of the United States can't cut one penny out of the social welfare system, and he wants to cut $1 trillion out of our military and hit our veterans, and that's disgusting.
So, Governor, and then Mr. Speaker, Senator Santorum passionately makes the case. It also is a time, as all of you know, of very tough budget decisions the next president is going to have to make, setting priorities. How do you do it? What specifically do you do to help the veterans?
Well, let's distinguish between what gets done at the federal level and what gets done at the state level. In our state, we found a way to help our veterans by saying, look, if you're going to come back, particularly if you're in the National Guard, we'll pay for your education, college degree, both the fees and tuition. We give you a full ride. And we also had a plan that said if you come back and you've been out of work for a year or more, we're going to put like a bonus on your back, which if anyone hires you, that bonus goes to them to pay for your training. So we can encourage that to occur. But let's do it at the state level. Let's not have the federal government continue to extend its tentacles into everything that goes on in this country. Let's take the money that we use to help people who have real needs, and instead of having it all administered by the federal government that thinks they know how to do everything, let's take that money, bundle up South Carolina's fair share and every other state's fair share, send it to them and say, you care for your people in the way you feel best. Let's do that at the state level. And I agree with what Senator Santorum said with regards to our military budget. Right now, for the president to be cutting $350,000 from our military budget, planning to cut another $650 billion, $350 billion, another $650 billion, $1 trillion. His Secretary of Defense says that represents a doomsday scenario. We've got an aging Navy. We've got an aging Air Force. They're planning on cutting our number of active duty personnel. They can't possibly keep up with the needs of our veterans. It is absolutely wrong to balance our budget on the backs of our military. We need a strong military, so strong no one in the world would ever think of testing it.
Mr. Speaker, please come in. We'll have some conversations about Commander-in-Chief. You have the floor now, specifically veterans who need jobs.
Let me just say two things about Congressman Paul's history. The U.S. government did two dramatic things after World War II. They created a GI Bill, which enabled literally millions of returning veterans to go to college for the very first time. My father, who was in the Second World War, went to college on a GI Bill. So there was an enormous expansion of opportunity that enabled them to integrate into a new emerging society. The second thing they did is they dramatically cut taxes. And the economy took off and grew dramatically, and it absorbed the workforce. So I would say we ought to both have a transition process for veterans to enable them to have a real advantage of getting a job when they come home, and we ought to have a very aggressive economic program of regulatory cuts and tax cuts in American energy so that the entire population